We have another honorary doctorate today, the second honorary doctorate to an incredibly bright and brilliant professor, a professor of primary care health sciences and a fellow of Green Templeton College, the University of Oxford. Can I have a round of applause for someone who's famous for her research on complex health innovations, Professor Trisha Greenhalgh. Trisha Greenhalgh, can you hear us?
I can.
And we can hear you. So we're incredibly honored to have you here among us here at Erasmus University. Have you been at Erasmus University before or in Rotterdam?
I have been there once for a conference, and I remember going to a discotheque in the student quarters. It is a great memory for me. I was the oldest person there by a long way.
We immediately believe that. How long ago was that?
Oh, 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. It's, yeah, well, Rotterdam is a very nice scene of discotheques, of course. A lot of people in the audience know that. When I did some research on you, what I found out is that you have 150,000 followers on Twitter. Is that right?
It sounds about right, yeah.
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 That's a lot, not just sharing your knowledge and expertise in academic journals, but sharing it on Twitter as well. How is it to share your knowledge there on a Twitter scene?
It's a really interesting medium because, you know, sometimes when I'm writing a paper and the word count is 5,000 words, I find it really hard to get my ideas into 5,000 words. But in a tweet, it's 280 characters. So it's a really good discipline to learn to be brief.
Yeah, and have your academic papers become shorter since as well, then?
Well, some of them have, yeah. Some of them have. I've written a few 1,000-word papers recently, and I think I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't been practicing on Twitter. Oh,
that would be an interesting research topic for one of the students, maybe, to see if the teachers who are active on Twitter actually have shorter journal papers than the others. Well, have a look at that. But there's someone here who wants to say some nice words about you, because of course you know why you're here. You're a brilliant scientist, and we want to award you for that. But we have someone here in the audience who wants to give you the laudatio, the honorary words. It's someone of the Erasmus School of Health Policy and Management. He is your honorary supervisor. Can I have a big round of applause for Professor Dr. Roland Bal?
Thank you. And thank you all. To say that healthcare is complex is by now a truism. The last year and a half, health and healthcare have been center stage in many countries. Healthcare and the way it's organized have probably never been as disputed before. And the intricacies of the healthcare system never has been as exposed. Besides about workforce, especially nurses, we've been talking endlessly of healthcare technologies, some quite mundane, such as mouth masks. Others more high-tech, such as ventilators or vaccines. But we have also seen how even the most simple technologies can lead to intensive public and academic debates, and that acceptance of such technologies has become highly complex. Professor Greenhalgh has for many years been a leading international scholar in the field of innovation in healthcare and healthcare services. Through her empirical and theoretical contributions, she has gained a strong international reputation in many different fields, including primary care medicine, health services research, and healthcare management. Her work on evaluating increasingly complex healthcare innovations in increasingly complex settings has been of great influence to these respective fields and to practice. Professor Greenhalgh is currently Professor of Primary Care Health Research at Oxford University, where she is co-director of the Interdisciplinary Research in Health Sciences Unit. She holds many positions in governmental advisory committees, within research bodies, and professional associations. She's a prolific writer with over 400 publications, many of which are extremely well cited. Has given many keynote lectures across the globe, and has won many prizes for her research. Only recently, she has been appointed as a member of the American National Academy of Medicine. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she has been an advisor to both national and international governments, and has set up major research programs into the transformation of primary care, into the wearing of face masks, and the treatment of long COVID. Professor Greenhalgh is well known for her research on complexity, which has led her to many contributions into the development of evidence-based medicine and the development of new methods for assessing health interventions, such as realist evaluation and narrative inquiry. These have been important to put complexity on the agenda of both innovators, researchers, policymakers, and practitioners. Empirically, she's contributed much to areas such as the development and use of e-health, the development of clinical guidelines, and the design of healthcare organizations. Her work on innovations in healthcare and the diffusion of innovation has gotten great acclaim and has been used in a great number of studies worldwide. Her work shows how difficult it is to come to working technologies that actually lead to better care when complexity is not taken into account. Professor Greenhalgh's work is remarkable in that she forms a bridge between the medical and the social sciences, showing that not just technological and clinical advances are necessary, but that these can only function in well-thought-through social contexts. Her NAS framework, or the framework on non-adoption, abandonment, and challenges to the scale-up, spread, and sustainability of health and care technologies, nicely captures and summarizes the social science literature on implementation, on spread, and leads to a practical tool to evaluate innovations. Hopefully, applications of the framework will lead to less abandonment and non-adoption of healthcare technologies in the future, or rather, to the development of technologies that actually fit with healthcare organizations and with patients. Professor Greenhalgh has contributed to many of the areas of study of Erasmus School of Health Policy and Management, and the work has inspired many of our researchers, not only for the theoretical, methodological, and empirical contributions, but also, and importantly, for her relentless drive to improve healthcare and the lives of patients. Our work on the sociology and organization of health and healthcare technologies has greatly benefited from her insights. And moreover, as a leading scholar, she has inspired many of the female researchers at school and elsewhere. And it's for these reasons that it is my great pleasure that I can, from this place, welcome her into our academic community today by handing to her an honorary doctorship from Erasmus University. And then I do this by saying sort of the magic words. The performativity of language, as you also have so nicely shown. By virtue of the powers invested in us by statute and in accordance with the decision of the doctorate board, we hereby confer upon thee, Trisha Greenhalgh, the title of Doctor Honoris Causa, together with all the rights which statute and custom attach to this degree. As a token and proof thereof, we present you with the corresponding charter, duly signed and sealed, and cloth you with the kappa. Congratulations.
Why don't you stay here for a moment, because I think we might have lost the connection.
The connection. Okay.
Yeah. While we try to have the connection together, is there some other stuff, some other stories maybe you can share with us? What kind of person are we honoring here?
Well, as you already said, she's a prolific tweeter as well. So I remember being in meetings with her, in which she was sort of constantly on Twitter, and that's kind of fun. It's also, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
I also like these moments of breaks, right? Because now we have to sort of fill in, and this is also what her work is about. So technology, and if you look at, if you hear some of the talks before, we pretend as if technology is always working,
yeah.
As if, you know, it's a sort of fluent process, and once we have things in place, it will automatically sort of do things for us. And of course, moments like this, breaks like this, show us that this is not true. That actually technologies need the support of many people, you know, and people, maybe you haven't seen them, yeah. But I know below here there is a whole team of people now working on getting the connection together. There's people in the back and in the back there, yeah. Trying to make sure that everything is running smoothly, right? So technology does not in itself work. It needs organization. And
so maybe this is the most important lesson of today.
This is actually what Trish teaches us all the time. So this connection between the technology and the social fabric is what her work is about.
Yeah, I think she's again with us. Are you there? Thank you. You rescued us. You helped us through these. Stay here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not about me.
Who knows what will happen next? I think we lost the connection while you were standing up, but you still need to, of course, receive the. Yeah. Ah. So we can applaud, and we are very happy for what you're gonna share with us, because we would love to hear some words of wisdom from you. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm not entirely sure which bit you missed, but my colleague, Professor Aileen Clark, did put the kappa around my shoulders, and we clipped it on, and she presented the big certificate to me, but maybe you missed that, which is a shame. I am absolutely delighted to accept this honorary doctorate from Erasmus University Rotterdam. And there are three reasons really why I'm so pleased to be associated with your university. And the first is that Erasmus himself, I think, was a bit of a rebel. He fought against dogma, he fought against religious and academic pomposity. And I guess I'm a bit of a rebel too, so I quite like that. The second reason why I'm thrilled to be part of your university is that compared to Oxford, you're a very young university. My university is 925 years old. Your university is 108 years old today. And although that's not the youngest, there's lots of universities that are much younger, but still compared to Oxford, you are much less weighed down by traditions. You are a very progressive university. And to me, what the name Erasmus University means is it means you are a real world university. You are focused, perhaps primarily, what I think of when I think of Erasmus is impact, is real world impact. You are very committed to having societal impact. You are very strong on business and entrepreneurship, on technology, as we have heard, on human welfare, on health, and very importantly, this week, this month, the green agenda. Those are the things I associate with this university. And the third reason why I'm thrilled to be associated with you is that some of my friends work there. I know several of your professors. I won't embarrass them by naming them, but I'm looking forward to coming and meeting up when the pandemic has calmed down a little bit, particularly actually Professor Roland Bal, whose work I have admired for many years. And I really must say to Professor Bal, thank you very much for your tribute, but also happy birthday, because it is your birthday today as well as the university's birthday. Thank you very much. And I think now I can start my talk, my little lecture about complexity, if someone loads it. It's coming. So the title of my talk is Making Health Technology Work for Society. And I've subtitled it, Think Complexity. And in this opening slide, you can see that in the top bar, I have given you some very rational images with boxes and arrows and diagrams where one thing leads to another in a very logical way, and we can divide the world up into equal-sized portions, and improvement goes from good to better to best. So that is the non-complex world. But the world of complexity is in the bottom of this slide. It's messy. I won't go through all the pictures, but one of those pictures is of a bicycle race, the Paris-Roubaix. I don't know if anyone's raced the Paris-Roubaix. I've raced it myself. And I can tell you, you cycle along cobblestones, and if one person falls over, everybody falls over. One tiny little error by one cyclist, and the whole pack goes down. There is also a diagram, a picture there of a dog. And inside the mouth of the dog is a blood glucose meter. And when real people try to monitor their blood glucose at home, sometimes they have to know how to remove the meter from the mouth of the family dog. This is complexity. It's not something that anybody who developed those technologies thought of, but it's something that happens in our homes because we don't live linear, rational, tidy lives. Now, here's just a picture to say thank you for inviting me to be part of your community. You can see these differences in the visual aspects of our universities. One is very old and traditional, one much more contemporary. But let me carry on with my talk now. What I want to talk about is complexity. Like Professor Bal, I've published papers on complexity. And one of the things we've been arguing for is a paradigm shift, particularly in healthcare, where so much research is reductive and organized around things like randomized controlled trials, not just those designs, but designs which assume a linear and perhaps Newtonian universe. And there's a big problem with that kind of research because in a way, it sits in the top of this two-part slide. So the top two pictures show simple and complicated things respectively. The simple task, making a sandwich, the complicated task of building a rocket, but both of these follow the same logic. The logic of simplicity or complicatedness. Those things are predictable. We can solve them through logical analysis. We can divide them into work packages and do little bits and then bring the bits together to bring the whole, to give us the whole. But complex phenomena, which I've illustrated with a picture of Greta Thunberg, quite an old picture now, complex phenomena such as the climate change challenges are unpredictable. They are inherently unsolvable, and they are full of interdependencies. Now, I want to give you just a few insights from my early research on technological innovation, because fundamentally, technological innovation is a complex phenomenon occurring in a complex system. And I'm going to give you just 3 because I don't want to go over time. I could give you 10 or 20 insights, but here's 1 or 2. The first thing that I've learned in 20 years of studying technological innovation is that the bigger and more interconnected the system, the greater will be the interdependencies, and therefore the greater the implementation effort. And what that means is, just like the little videos you've been showing of one person with one technology describing their own experiences, that can work very well. But once you try to scale it, once you try to do this for everybody with that condition, or across a country, or across even, the whole world, I've been trying to get the whole world to wear masks. This becomes much, much more complex, and we can't solve it through the linear, tidy, rational means that I put on the top of my first slide. The second insight that I want to talk about is stakeholders. And a stakeholder means somebody who has a view about a topic. Perhaps they have a financial interest, a political interest, a personal interest, but different stakeholders have very different goals, different values, different priorities, and they define success and failure very differently. I was once involved in evaluating the national programme for IT in the UK National Health Service, and we asked lots of different stakeholders what they would see as success in that project. And we found 28 different definitions of success. So, of course, if everyone has a different definition of success, people disagree on whether the project has succeeded. So we can't work towards a situation where everybody agrees with everybody else. Consensus is usually a false and unattainable goal. But what we can do is bring people around a table and get them to talk to each other and listen to each other so that everybody understands where everybody else is coming from. And this kind of inter-stakeholder dialogue is crucial for success whenever you're trying to do technology and indeed any complex change at scale. The third insight that I'm going to tell you about, and I'm only going to give you 3 insights because, as I say, we could go on all afternoon with this, is about tension and paradox. A complex system is characterized by tensions and paradoxes that are impossible to resolve. For example, the tension between standardization and local contingency. On the one hand, it would be great if everybody used the same technology, the same guideline, the same approach. On the other hand, some local people, local teams may have very good reasons for doing things differently. How do you balance that tension? There is no rule that applies in all circumstances. We need to be aware of the tension, be aware that this is something we can't resolve, and then make practical, pragmatic progress. So you can see that these rules are sort of intuitive, but they're not rigid. They're not something that we can put into a guidebook and say, this is how you do complex change, because complex change just doesn't work like that. Now I'm going to draw on the work of another academic who's not from Oxford and he's not from Erasmus. He's actually from the University of Cyprus, Haridimos Soukas. And the reason I wanted to use this paper is that both Roland Bal's group and my group do a lot of work around complexity. And this paper, I think, really sums up some of the insights and some of the philosophical underpinnings of this work on complex change. And he puts in this paper a quote from the philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle said, "Nor is wisdom only concerned with universals. To be wise, one must also be familiar with the particular, since wisdom has to do with action, and the sphere of action is constituted by particulars." And what that means is we need to tell stories. In order to do what Soukas calls complexify, so don't simplify, complexify, in order to do that, we have to use richly described case studies, which allow us to learn by understanding the particular. So we move from disjunctive theorizing, in other words, breaking things up into small particles and analyzing those, to conjunctive theorizing, pulling together the whole, the totality of, if you like, the case study. Now, just getting my technical bits correct there. What Sukas says is that to illuminate complex change in organizations, we need three things: an open world ontology, a performative epistemology, and a poetic praxeology. Now, I'm a native English speaker, and these words are quite difficult for me. So I think if you're speaking English as a second language, it's even more difficult and complex. But let me explain these three things, because they're actually not so difficult. An open world ontology is exactly what a lot of you are doing at Erasmus. You know that the world is subject to a lot of different interacting influences, which must be understood as a story and richly described. So you're not taking everything off into the laboratory, you're engaging with the real world challenges. Secondly, a performative epistemology. Now Roland's already used the word performative, and a lot of the research that comes out of particularly the Netherlands, particularly this university, is looking in a performative way at what is brought into being through action. So performative epistemology is a focus on action in the real world and what becomes possible through action. And finally, a poetic praxeology is really using creative methods, beautiful text, if you like, telling good stories with a good plot, with imagery, perhaps with some visuals, a good storyline, a good plot, good metaphors, that kind of thing. Now, this is very strange language to talk about science. Normally we talk about precision and accuracy and rigor and all this kind of thing. And what I like about Sukas's work is that he manages to capture what it is about real world case study that is exciting and important and illuminative. So, pressing the wrong button here. So, in summary, and I've given a few of my case study papers here to just illustrate the kind of work that I've been doing around the complexity of the particular. We had one study, the one in the top left, we wanted to call it actually Scotland the Brave. We've just used a national case study of why Scotland managed to introduce video consultations at pace and scale during the pandemic, when almost no other country in the world did. We needed to describe it very richly. It's quite a long paper. We told stories about what happened on the islands of Scotland, that kind of thing. The one below that, I'm not going to tell you all of these, why national e-health programs need dead philosophers. We used one tiny little case study, just involving 3 or 4 people, to put the world into a grain of sand. Something went wrong, something terrible went wrong. And we used that example to then, as a window into this wider world of why the entire national programme for IT in the UK, £13 billion worth of IT, just didn't go the way they wanted, the way they expected it to go. And so these kind of case studies have a value. They're not valued by some of the leading journals. They're not valued by many doctors who say, well, hang on a minute, where's your control group? But they are valued by the people who understand what case study is and also what complexity is. So I come back to my very first slide, my opening slide, to say that where my research is, and I think where some great research coming out of Erasmus is as well, is in that bottom string of pictures there with things that weren't expected, things that are highly interdependent. They have social and political components, as well as narrowly scientific components. So the only other thing I wanted to say is that on the top of that slide is my Twitter handle. And if you want to tweet up afterwards to say hello to me, I'll try and reply. And thank you very much for listening. I look forward to coming to Rotterdam, hopefully in about March time, and meeting some of you in person. So thank you very much again for the honorary doctorate.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, of course. The world is better off and surely more understandable because of people like you. So thank you for your very clear lecture here as well. You quoted Aristotle. I think it was Quintilian who also encouraged people to keep their language simple. He once compared words to money, where he said both only get their value because they're widely accepted. And if they're not widely accepted, it has no value at all. So thank you very much. I think it was very clear what you shared with us, and again, congratulations. Yeah.